You two are really gullible if you believe this old wizard's wild tale. Han scoffed.
It's the truth. I don't know how, but it is. I just know somehow,
Leia said very quietly. Obi-Wan smiled. She had absolutely no idea how strong the Force was with her. Well, Captain, you'll soon be eating your words when we get to Polis Massa, Rex told him. R2, come here for a moment, Obi-Wan said. The little droid chirped and wheeled beside Obi-Wan. R2, I know that there are certain transmissions that you were restricted to only play for Anakin and Padme, but I think we can play them for Luke and Leia now. Obi-Wan said. Wait, R2 knew our parents too? Luke asked. Actually, he belongs to them, Obi-Wan replied. R2 chirped affirmatively, and saw no reason to hide anything anymore, especially from his masters and mistresses' children now that they knew the truth. His imager flashed, bringing up a holo screen. The image of a young man in a long black cloak and a woman in a beautiful white dress appeared. The couple joined hands, standing before the holy man. The holy man quietly finished the ceremony and stepped away, allowing the young, forbidden couple their privacy. The handsome man leaned down to kiss his beautiful bride. Luke and Leia stared in amazement at what they were seeing, and even Han had to admit the uncanny resemblance between the four in front of him. That must have been their wedding, Rex said. This is the first time we're seeing it too. Only R2 and 3PO attended, Rex added. R2 changed the image, and the two people appeared again. They looked different, a little older, especially the man. His hair was now shoulder length, and they watched as he picked the woman up and spun her around. They were standing in some sort of meadow. The woman slapped his arms playfully as he tickled her sides. Annie, stop! 3PO is trying to take a holo of us, the woman said. Oh, I'm sorry, Angel. He chuckled as he wrapped his arms around her waist. There, all done, Miss Padme, 3PO said. Padme smiled. Thank you, 3PO, she replied, before turning in her husband's arms. Anakin leaned down and kissed her passionately. Padme broke the kiss and looked up at him with sad eyes. You're leaving in the morning? She asked. He nodded sadly. I have to return to the Outer Rim, even though what I really want is to stay with you forever, Anakin told her. Padme clung to him tightly. I don't know what I'd do if I ever lost you, she cried. You won't lose me, my love. I will always come back to you, Anakin replied, as he caressed her cheek and then turned to R2 with a smile. You can turn your holo recorder off now, R2, he said with a slight smile as his lips descended upon his wife's. R2 shut off his projector and whirled sadly, indicating that he missed his master and mistress. Did I hear her say 3PO, as in goldenrod over here? Han asked. Obi-Wan chuckled. Yes, Anakin built 3PO himself, even if 3PO doesn't remember him, Obi-Wan replied. Great, remind me to thank him for building the most annoying droid in the galaxy, Han replied, sarcasm lacing his voice. My mother called him Annie. Isn't that your daughter's name? Luke asked. Obi-Wan smiled. Yes, Annie was a nickname your father went by when he was a boy. As he got older, he didn't like it, and your mother is the only one that calls him that now. Without your father, I would never have had the courage to go against the code, and Satine and I wouldn't be together. We fell in love a long time ago, when I was just a young Padawan. Neither of us quite had the courage your parents did to do whatever it took to be together, so we decided we would name our child after him if it was a boy. But when we found out it would be a girl, we decided that Annie was the perfect name for her, Obi-Wan explained. Luke smiled and nodded. There's also something you must know about Ahsoka, Rex said to Leia. My bodyguard? How do you know about Ahsoka? She's been my guardian since I was a child. Leia wondered. Since the day you were born, actually. In fact, she is waiting for us on Polis Massa with my wife and daughter. Obi-Wan said, Why is Ahsoka there? And how do you know her? Leia asked. She was your father's Padawan, Obi-Wan stated. Padawan is like a student, right? Leia asked. Obi-Wan nodded. Yes, just as Anakin was mine, Ahsoka was his. and she was devastated the day she nearly lost her master. She learned of your parents' marriage just a couple of months before I did, and she accepted it because she loved him like a father, Obi-Wan explained.
Leia was stunned. She loved Ahsoka like an aunt, and she had looked out for her all these years, because she truly loved her too, having devoted her life to her protection in her parents' honour. Suddenly a beeping was heard coming from the cockpit.
Looks like we're here. Strap in while I take us in,
Han said dejectedly as he went to the cockpit. He had gotten way more than he ever bargained for out of this little escapade, and it was all because of that crazy old man in the back. Dr. Zeon Termek waited for the passengers of the strange-looking ship to disembark. Obi-Wan Kenobi had contacted him upon their entrance into the atmosphere, and he was eagerly awaiting them, especially when Obi-Wan had informed him that the children were with him. It wasn't every day that one could reunite children with parents, especially not in a case like this, and he was looking forward to it. He was also quite pleased that his carbonite freezing experiment had been a complete success with his two patients. He had spent the last 18 years studying the two encased in the carbonite. Their vitals continued to mirror each other's throughout the years, and the vibrant connection between the two had been evident all these years as well. It had amazed Zeon every day. Obi-Wan stepped off the ship, with 3 young people, Captain Rex, whom he was familiar with, a Wookiee and 2 droids following him.
Master Kenobi, it is good to see you again,
Zeon said.
It is good to see you again too, Dr. Termek.
Obi-Wan shook his hand.
My, are these the children I helped deliver?
He asked.
Yes, Zeon, this is Luke and Leia. They are still in a bit of shock though, as I have just told them everything. This is Han, our pilot, Chewbacca, his co-pilot, and you remember Commander Rex?
Obi-Wan introduced. Luke and Leia shook his hands, and Han nodded his greeting.
Of course,
the Doctor acknowledged with a nod to Rex.
Well, if you'd follow me,
Zeon said as he led them into the compound. They all piled onto the elevator and watched, as Zeon hit a button that would take them into the bowels of the facility.
Rarely over the years have we ever had any Imperials make their way to our small planet. Fortunately, the Empire sees us as insignificant. But about 5 years after the children were born, a small detachment of stormtroopers arrived seeking medical attention. They had been separated from their frigate and made contact with it. With Commander Rex's help, we hid Anakin and Padme, but after such a close call, we thought it was best to hide them down here in a locked chamber,
Zeon explained, as the lift arrived on the bottom floor. He led the small party to the room at the end of the corridor and typed in a security code onto a panel. The heavy durasteel door slid open, revealing Satine, Annie, and Ahsoka, who were all waiting for them. "Daddy!" Annie called as Obi-Wan scooped her up. Satine hugged him tightly and they shared a quick kiss.
"Leia, I was so worried about you,"
Ahsoka said as she hugged the young woman. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have slipped away from you. I just had to see that the plans were protected myself." Leia replied, "I know why you did, and the Force works in mysterious ways. Had you not done what you did, both of us would have been on Alderaan when Tarkin ordered for it to be destroyed." Ahsoka said, "But Dad was," she said sadly. "But I guess he wasn't my real dad anyway," she added.
"Sweetheart, he was your dad as much as your real dad is too. He raised you, and I know your real parents. They'll be forever grateful to him for taking such wonderful care of you and raising you into the exceptional young woman you've become,"
Ahsoka said. Leia smiled warmly as they shared another hug.
"Wow, so I guess you're not the Ice Princess after all,"
Han said sarcastically, earning him a glare from her. Ahsoka broke the hug and looked at the young man next to her. "Hello, Luke," she said. "Ben said that you were my dad's Padawan." Luke replied. Ahsoka nodded. "I was, and he was the best master I could have had. He loved your mother so much, and me like a daughter. And he loved both of you so much already, even though you hadn't been born yet. The time you both lost with your real parents was stolen from you by evil. But thanks to the grace of the Force, you're all going to get a chance to be a family again, at last," Ahsoka said, as she looked to the wall, causing Luke and Leia to turn. On the wall, 2 people lay in copper-coloured casing. It was time. At last. The Doctor walked toward the control dais and turned one near Anakin, Then he turned another that was near Padme.
Luke, help me with your father, so that he will not fall. Rex can handle your mother,
Obi-Wan said. The copper casing turned red with heat, as the carbon around them melted. They both started to fall towards the floor, but Padme was caught by Rex, while Obi-Wan and Luke caught Anakin. Leia looked at Luke angrily. "You could help, you know."
She said. "Look, Princess, I don't even want to be here,"
Han retorted. "Right, I forgot that you don't care about anyone but yourself."
Leia retorted. "Well, as soon as you pay me, your highnessness, you can be rid of me."
Han spat. Leia fumed, glaring at the scoundrel. "As soon as we get to Yavin 4, you'll get your filthy money," she spat back, as she turned her attention to what was happening before them. They helped Anakin and Padme lay down on a couple of beds, while they started to come around. They were shaking violently, but the doctor was quick to inject them both in the arm with a liquid substance. "What is that?" Leia asked.
"It will clear up the effects of the hibernation sickness in moments, rather than the usual hour that it would take," the doctor explained.
Anakin stirred and opened his eyes, but blackness met his vision. Alarmed, he quickly reached out with the Force. He felt several people in the room, but only recognized 4. Relief flooded his senses, as he realized 4 of those people were Obi-Wan, his beloved Padme, Ahsoka, and Rex.
"Padme! Obi-Wan?" he called first. "Ahsoka? Rex?" he called again. "I'm right here, Anakin."
Obi-Wan said.
"Where's Padme?"
he said immediately. "Annie?"
he heard her call. "I'm here, Padme," he called.
"Why can't I see?" she asked.
"There is much I need to explain to you both. You've both been frozen in carbonite, and you're suffering from hibernation sickness. Your eyesight will return in a moment, thanks to Dr. Termak,"
Obi-Wan told them.
"This may sting for a moment, but your eyesight will return,"
Zeon said, as he held a small tool in his hands. He held each of Anakin's eyes open, one at a time, as he used the light-stimulating tool on each. Anakin groaned in pain and blinked his eyes rapidly. Slowly, his vision cleared, and he hopped to his feet.
"Easy, Anakin,"
Obi-Wan told him, as he led them over to the bed where Padme sat. By then, his vision had mostly cleared, as he gazed down at his beautiful angel, as he took her hands in his own. There were so many questions swimming in their heads, as he struggled to recall his last memories. Padme whimpered, as the doctors used the light tool on her eyes, and she blinked them rapidly. Her vision slowly cleared, and she gazed up at her husband. She suddenly remembered him going into cardiac arrest and nearly losing him. "Oh, Annie!" she cried as she threw her arms around him, and quickly started crying against his chest.
"Angel, it's okay. I'm here,"
he said, a little confused by her franticness. She looked up at him. "But you were dying! Your heart stopped beating, and I thought I was going to lose you. You fell into a coma, and I gave birth! Oh, Annie, the twins! They're so beautiful! But I don't remember anything else. Obi-Wan, where are our babies?" she asked frantically.
"And why were we frozen in carbonite?" Anakin asked. "Do you remember the battle in the Chancellor's office?" Obi-Wan asked.
Anakin thought back, and his eyes widened. Anakin fought furiously, face to face with his own son, the tears still escaping his eyes as he thought about what was stolen from him and Padme. His son was calling himself Darth Vader, but he was supposed to have been Aiden Skywalker. He was supposed to be around 2 years old right now, but instead, he stood there, a grown man, because of accelerated aging manipulation. Palpatine fought with Mace and knew it was time to end this battle, for he and his apprentice had much to do. Palpatine force-pushed Mace against the wall and poured Force lightning into Anakin. Darth Vader joined his master and poured Force lightning into the man that he knew had fathered him. Anakin cried out in agony as he felt the lightning sear through all of his organs. Relentlessly, they poured enough lightning in him to kill a normal man. When they finally ceased, Anakin collapsed against the wall, fighting unconsciousness. But Vader was not done. Viciously, as Anakin tried to step forward, the young Sith thrust his blade into Anakin's side. Originally, he had been aiming for the heart, but thanks to Anakin shifting away at the last minute, the blade only passed through his side. And then, blackness was all he knew.
"I remember. The battle with Palpatine and Vader. The Force lightning. It was just too much."
Anakin said.
It should have killed you, and any normal man it would have. Mace managed to get you out of there, and we came to Polis Massa to seek medical attention,
Obi-Wan said.
I was dying. I remember now. I said goodbye to you,
Anakin said as he took Padme's hand. And I couldn't let you go. You slipped into a coma. I gave birth, and the last thing I remember was seeing our babies, Padme replied.
That's because you slipped into a coma as well, Padme,
Obi-Wan said.
But you said something about us being frozen in carbonite? Why? And how long have we been frozen?
Anakin asked.
When you fell into the coma, the doctor did not think you would make it unless your body was allowed the time needed to heal. That's why you were put in the carbonite freezing. It preserved your body, and began a very slow, yet effective means of healing. Padme's condition seemed to mirror your own, so she too was put in the same status to prevent her death, while you healed.
Obi-Wan explained, though Anakin could sense there was more to it than that.
Obi-Wan, what are you not telling us? I can tell you're keeping something from us,
Anakin said, getting impatient. He and Padme had both stopped shaking from the freezing by now, thanks to the drug the healer had just injected into both of them.
You and Padme have been frozen for 18 years,
Obi-Wan said. 18 years? Anakin cried. Obi-Wan, what happened to our babies? Padme asked nervously.
They were well taken care of, Padme. We had to separate them though, but Rex has looked out for Luke over the years, and Ahsoka has been with Leia. Luke was raised by Owen and Beru, and Leia was raised by Bail Organa,
Obi-Wan replied. But what about my parents? And my sister? Padme asked.
Obi-Wan looked at her sadly. I'm sorry, Padme. But in order to protect the twins from the Emperor, we had to let them and the rest of the galaxy believe that you and Anakin had died, as did the baby you were carrying.
Obi-Wan replied. Anakin squeezed her shoulder.
So, where are they now?
Anakin asked, as he suddenly answered his own question. He caught sight of the two young people near Rex and Ahsoka, and immediately remembered them from a dream he had had when he had first found out Padme was pregnant.
They're right here in this room,
Anakin said as he looked at them both.
Yes, and they've just found out about you and each other, so they are in shock as well,
Obi-Wan said. Anakin and Padme stared at their grown children, hardly able to believe all they had missed. Tears slipped down Padme's cheeks as they slowly approached them. The tears were coming down Luke and Leia's cheeks now, as they looked at their parents. Padme merged the distance between them and took her son in her arms, hugging him tightly. He hugged back, freely crying now. Anakin stepped cautiously towards Leia, who looked at him with watery brown eyes. I used to see you in my dreams when I was a little girl, she sobbed.
What do you mean?
He asked gently. She sniffed. I would be having a nightmare, and something horrible would be happening, when suddenly all the bad things and all the fear would melt away. Then I'd find myself in a garden, and you'd be there. You would pick me up and start rocking me, and I'd feel safe. I think in the back of my mind I knew who you are, but I always thought it was just a dream. Leia sobbed. Anakin put his hand on her shoulder.
It was the will of the Force. Even though I was in a coma and I don't remember, the Force allowed me to comfort you when you needed me,
Anakin explained. To his complete surprise, Leia dove into them, hugging him back tightly. Padme pulled back so she could look at her son. You're so handsome, just like your father, she said, a few tears trickling down her face. Luke sniffed.
I've wanted to meet you for so long. I never thought it was possible, because they told me you and Father were dead,
Luke said sadly. Padme gave Anakin a brief glance before hugging Luke again. Anakin pulled back, and Leia began wiping her tears away furiously. Anakin chuckled and wiped a couple away for her.
You're just as beautiful as your mother. I knew you would be,
he said. Leia smiled and then hugged her mother, while Anakin moved over to Luke. Now, how come I'm not tall, like you? Luke asked with a smile. Anakin laughed and finally hugged his son.
He pulled back and felt Padme's arms go around his waist. He leaned down and pressed a soft kiss to her lips.
Time was stolen from us by evil. But we're a family, and we won't let them steal anything else from us,
Anakin said, as Padme cuddled close to his side, and their kids joined them on either side of a family hug.
It's about time you woke up, Rex joked as he approached them. Thanks, Rex, for looking out for Luke for us all these years. And you too, Snips. Thanks for looking out for our little girl. It looks like Luke and Leia aren't the only ones that grew up,
Anakin said wistfully.
I've missed you, Master, Ahsoka said, choking back sobs. Get in here, Snips. You're family too. Both of you,
Anakin said as Ahsoka hugged both Anakin and Padme. It was then that Anakin and Padme noticed Obi-Wan with Satine, who was holding a blonde-haired little girl.
You and Satine?
Anakin asked.
Yes, I decided to break the code too. Best decision of my life,
Obi-Wan replied. Anakin grinned and put his arm around Padme's waist, gazing at her fondly.
Mine too,
he added. You have a daughter, Padme said excitedly. Satine smiled. Yes, this is little Annie. Satine said. Padme gasped and looked at her husband, whose eyes got big in surprise.
You named her after me?
Anakin asked in awe.
Well, you are the reason she was born. You and Padme.
Obi-Wan replied.
I'm honoured,
he said genuinely.
I guess I can't make fun of all your grey hairs now, though,
Anakin joked. Annie! Padme scolded with a light nudge to his ribs.
Oh, please,